And welcome to our live stream of the Parentis Literary Salon. Today is Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day! Yay!
Oh, Valentine.
That's so
And this salon is the opener for our spring 2023 season. Does anyone want to do the math on how many seasons we have been hosting this salon for? I'm pretty sure it's our 27th season.
Oh my gosh.
Which is a lot of seasons. So a big hello if you are watching on the playback. We are glad that you are watching. And for our live audience, please take a second to put your city in the chat and say hello, say hi to us, because we want to know who is out there today. So, hey, happy Valentine's Day, God and Cat. Tell us who you are. We love you. Okay. Speaking of being seen, we thank you to the New York State Council on the Arts and to the DeGroat Foundation for their generous funding. We want everyone out there who's a writer to be aware that the Courage to Write grants close for their applications very soon. This year, for the first time, there is an additional 3 $7,000 grants for writers who are immigrants or writing about issues pertaining to immigration. Check them out on their website, degroatfoundation.org. Also, the Sustainable Arts Foundation grant is closing soon. So all you parents who are writers, get out there and get some money. Also, artists who are parents are also eligible for the Sustainable Arts money. The Parentis Literary Salons are a monthly literary event featuring the vast diversity of writers who are also parents to highlight the fact that great writers have written great books while also being great parents. Yes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. This is me being a teenager. Subscribe to our YouTube channel or to our mailing list to get notified of future events. We do these every month on the second Tuesday of the month. Okay, so in case you don't know by now, I am DeVoe, like it says, founder and executive director of Parentis. That's me. And this is our fabulous curator whose birthday was yesterday and who is my online Valentine. Everyone, welcome Christina Chiu, who's going to tell us
Hi, everyone.
All about the writers. Oh, look at all these people. Christina, Portland,
Yay!
Oregon, Star, West Coast. Go West Coast.
Yeah, hello.
Perth, Western Australia.
Australia. Woo!
Awesome. I love this. Pleasantville, New Jersey. Thanks for coming. This is very exciting. We like it. We like it when people post from where they are and what they're doing. So you guys have to be very active. You can click hearts and stuff and we can see them. And not to mention, get your questions in order, because as soon as we are done with introducing everybody and everybody reading, there's going to be Q&A. So don't forget. Hey, Louis, thanks for coming.
Louis.
All right, let's go. Christina, who are these people?
Hi, everyone. So this is the perfect Valentine Salon. It's all about connection. And we have 3 amazing authors. I'm going to introduce them briefly, and then we'll go to our first reader. So we have Louis Greenstein. He's the award-winning author of 2 novels, The Song of Life and Mr. Boardwalk, and also 12 plays. Wow. So there's no joke. We have Sufiya Abdur-Rahman. She's the author of the memoir, Heir to the Crescent Moon. And finally, we have Sara Lippmann. She's the author of story collections, Doll Palace and Jerks. The first time she read at Parentis, she was discovered by her agent. We are thrilled to host her again, and we're presenting her debut novel, Lech. So everyone, please welcome Sara Lippmann.
Yay! That's Louis.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you mentioned that, Christina, because it's nice to be back here. The first time I did read for you all, it was in person, and that was an amazing stroke of serendipity that my future agent happened to be in the audience that night.
And that your talent swept her off her feet.
So which is to say to everybody who's, participating, in the chat and here tonight, get out there and read as often as you can, because you never know what can happen. So it's part of being a practicing writer. So I'm very grateful to Parentis. So my novel Lech came out in October, and it revolves around the potential sale of a property in the Catskills in upstate New York. And it's told from 5 different points of view. And so I'm not going to really get into much of it, except that I'm going to introduce one of the points of view tonight, which is the point of view of the owner of the main property, who's renting it out to someone from Manhattan. So his name is Ira Letcher. He's kind of the central character here. She is 20. She is 40. To Ira Letcher, the woman seems almost a child, hair bunched in buns like teddy bear ears, standard white t-shirt betraying, if it betrays anything, only a lack of imagination. Cut-off jeans, fringed at the thigh, give way to legs, long legs, legs that hook fast to hips, legs that have known their geography, but that seem somehow lost, out of practice, ill-defined, unaccustomed to sun. From this vantage point, he can't be sure, but with girls, it's never a stretch. What matters is she's here. He ducks down, chest first, arms pumping at his sides, as if the ground is a surfboard and she is his wave cresting toward him. It is the same each summer. His property becomes his own wildlife park, a controlled environment in which he knows exactly what he'll find, his new tenant right on schedule. Half a mile away, Ira heard her round the bend, expecting the usual. Black SUV, 3rd row, essentially a minivan, but without the stigma. Instead, it was one of those gas-efficient cars, light as a toy, bouncing over the pebble drive, struggling to come to a stop. His ex-wife, Vivian, had the drive installed from the quarry when she'd come up alone with the girls to ensure no surprise visitors. The grass tickles his neck like a hippie's full bush. Supposedly, that's the rage again. What's old is new, life itself one smug circle. But Ira has little use for trends. His eyesight isn't what it used to be either. Add that to his stunning list of inadequacies. But if his vision is weak, his body is strong, strong enough to support his own weight as he army crawls toward her. 15, 30 paces, elbows pressing into the earth. There's nothing sinister about it. He's but a boy, reliving his days at Max Mendel's mountain village, deep in the land of pretend. He's a sniper in the trenches, a hunter tracking a duck or deer, some real-life Elmer Fudd. Oh, come on, joke. This is 2014. She's not the hunt. You should be ashamed of yourself, Viv would say, preying on anything with legs. At 66, Ira is long past shame. Who's preying? What harm was fantasy? When has loneliness ever killed anyone? That's not even funny. She has a child. The good ones always do. Ira remains confounded by his own adult children, Heather and Hillary. He's got nothing to do with them. Kids, complicated matters. Kids came between perfectly decent people, but this kid, honey curls, bare feet, Ira understands implicitly. The boy speaks his language of want. He wants to be put down, but she whisks him up and over to the tall field by the side of the house, adjacent to the outdoor shower he built, a simple pine box akin to what he buried his parents in, door with a rusted hinge. The boy sneezes. Mom stops, drops, peers up the kid's nose as if it contained all the world's answers, at which point he breaks free, falling back on the lawn as if onto a mosh pit, as if life were a trust game on which to be buoyed by infinite cheering hands, as if. The kid beetles the air, uproots a fistful of dandelions whose fluff he casts with profligate abandon. A ribbon of dust sails behind him. How the world speaks to the young. Ira feels it in the kishkas. To have one's whole life ahead, the joys, the sorrows. Next season, his property will be foolish with weeds. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yes.
So, like I said, this salon is about connection. And it sounds like there are a lot of misconnections in this piece. Can you talk a little bit about your book for a moment, Sarah, and just explain so people know really what it's about?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a novel that, like I said, the thin elevator pitch is that it revolves around the potential sale of a property in the Catskills in 2014 and the repercussions on the lives of 5 different people. But that is like a pretty lame plot device for a novel that looks deeply at the predatory impulses of human nature, as it asks the question that we find in the book of Genesis of Lech Lecha, which is how to go forth, how to build a life, freeing ourselves from, or at least learning how to shoulder some of the things that we carry. So it really sort of examines. Oh, hey, Bala Kinwood, I just saw in the chat. That's my hometown.
Yay!
So, yeah, so it really sort of it's a lot about it's really I mean, I feel like all novels, all stories are sort of a love story in some way, but all the characters have sort of are sort of misguided in how they go about it, but they are desperately, each one of them is isolated and desperate for some measure of connection.
I'm so intrigued by the fact that this transition between boy and man, and at what age is it creepy to crawl across the grass at somebody? Like, of course, it's play for a long time, but at some point, it's definitely creepy, and it's well before 64. So, but it's interesting, isn't it? It's like all these things that you learn in childhood, and at some point, they get creepy. It's a really
I mean, it was like the voyeurism was what really, I mean, the initial seedling of the novel. I don't know if I shared this with you, Milda, at one point, but like this book took me a long time. And like I said, it's got 5 points of view, but it really started with this seedling of an idea. I'm usually a short story writer, but this seedling of an idea was just a man who rents out his property, but then doesn't leave. So it was kind of this like voyeuristic impulse that for me felt kind of novelistic in scope that got me going.
That's amazing.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Sarah.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We will talk more.
We will talk more. Our next reader is Louis Greenstein. He is the award-winning author, like I said, of 2 novels, 12 plays. He's the recipient of a Pennsylvania Council on the Arts Playwriting Fellowship and a 2020 Sunny Award for Fiction. He has also edited books on subjects ranging from self-help to Led Zeppelin. Woo! He has produced his 2 documentary films, covered professional boxing for the Ring magazine, and written for the Emmy-winning TV show, and you all know this, the Rugrats. Everyone, please welcome Louis Greenstein.
Yay!
Thank you. Oh, the Bala Kinwood connection is my friend Etty, and my wife and I raised our kids in Lower Merion, so we have the
crossover
connection.
That's so cool.
So I just a few comments before I do a short reading. Thank you, Christina and Milda. Thanks to Penn Parentis for being so supportive of writers who are parents. And I want to welcome everybody to my case of imposter syndrome, which I caught after I started reading Sufiya's and Sarah's stuff. Great writers, great thinkers, really important voices. So happy Valentine's Day. This May, my wife, Catherine, and I will be celebrating our 40th wedding anniversary.
Whoa. Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. I married well and stepped out of the way. So we have 3 great grown kids, some of whom may be here. But I want to talk about and address another kind of love. These are my Valentines, and the people I love most in the whole world is my wife and kids. But I want to talk about another kind of love, cousin love, the cousin connection. My adolescence was punctuated by trauma, and we can talk about that later or anytime. I'm always happy to talk about my trauma. But I have 5 cousins, 5 first cousins, some of whom may be here tonight, I don't know, who really helped me to survive. And right now, I want to read a section of my novel, The Song of Life, that is a conversation between 2 first cousins. So the setup is these cousins are named Margaret and Roy Holly. Margaret has invited Roy for dinner. This was a big day for her. Earlier that afternoon at the library, she got hit on the head with a Bhagavad Gita. Margaret took that as a sign that something really big and wonderful was about to happen. So she called Roy, and Roy would be the first person she would share this news with. Roy works as a boxing manager. He scouts and signs guys at a local gym, and he manages fighters. And in this scene that I'll read, Roy is arriving for dinner at Margaret's with a pile of bricks that she has requested that she needs to raise this table to make an altar for her Bhagavad Gita.
Wait, Louis, right before you start reading, can you explain what the Bhagavad Gita?
The Bhagavad Gita it's a Hindu scripture. It's a short section of the Mahabharata. Mahabharata is the longest poem ever written. There's like 2 million words in it. And it is the story of Arjuna, this great warrior. The Bhagavad Gita is a small section of the Mahabharata, and it's a conversation between the warrior Arjuna and Krishna, who's God. But Krishna is kind of hiding out as Arjuna's chariot driver. And they're driving to a battle, this great battle. And when they get there, Arjuna sees all these people he loves, family, friends, teachers on the other side. And he doesn't want to kill his enemies. And Krishna, and so the entire Bhagavad Gita is this conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. So Margaret is sitting in the library, and a volume falls from a shelf and lands on her head, and that is what starts the novel. So in this scene, Roy is showing up for dinner. Margaret, Roy bellowed. Kitchen, she called back. Roy set the bricks beside the legless table under the window in the living room. He went into the kitchen. Margaret stood at the stove, stirring a pot of chicken stew. Cornbread's in the oven, she said. Did you bring me bricks? Next to the table out there. Roy opened the fridge and grabbed a beer. He popped the can and reclined against the counter, arching his back and puffing his chest. How's your head? He asked. Did you say that a book fell on you? With a wooden spoon, Margaret glopped a can of Campbell's mushroom soup into the simmering chicken broth. Oh, no, it's not a book, Roy. It's a Bhagavad Gita. It's out there on the shrine. Huh? Out there on the table where you left the bricks. Want to see it? Later, he said, hoisting himself up on the counter and taking hold of Margaret's shoulders from behind. Right now, I want to see your head. Show me where the book that's not a book landed. Margaret waved him off with her drippy wooden spoon. She turned the flame down, opened the fridge, and reached for a can of beer. Come back here, said Roy, grabbing at the air. Let me see it. I told you I'm fine, she giggled. Look who's all of a sudden a lump expert. But she yielded, allowing her cousin to part her hair with his fingers and inspect her Gita bump. I am a lump expert, he said. I'm the master. I see this shit every day. I see guys get their heads cracked open. You know how a boxer gets cut? This is interesting. He takes a punch, and then it swells up so big, it literally breaks the skin from the inside, you know, as opposed to like a glove somehow cutting you. Yuck, said Margaret. Am I bleeding? Nah. Were you dizzy, nauseous? I'm telling you, I'm okay. Roy pressed his cold beer can to her lump, like a cornerman holding an end swell to a boxer's bloody brow between rounds. Keep this on for a minute. It brings the swelling down. Seriously, said Margaret. I need to stir. The thing happened like 4 hours ago. It's done swelling. Roy bent down and kissed the top of Margaret's head. He pressed her hair with his fingers, covering the red-gray knob on her scalp. There, can't even see it. You're good to go. Like I said, she said. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to know, because it's so dialogue fun and dialogue heavy, I was wondering whether you you do plays a lot and you've done Rugrats, and did you start in theater or did you start in written fiction and then go to theater?
I started in theater, and so we're all friends. I can share this with you.
Yeah.
I'm a recovering mime.
All the things he never said.
So no, it was interesting and kind of funny. I started my career as a mime artist on the mall in Boulder, Colorado. And I went out there to study with a man named Samuel Avatar. So I tell you, like I won't talk too much, but like the traumas I alluded to in my adolescence. So I'm laughing. So my whole family died. My mother, father, and only brother all died young over a period of like 8 years. And so but the funny part is this. When you're like 22, right, and all your friends are like going to medical school or law school or like starting their careers, and you've had like all this loss and grieving and trauma, and people are so afraid like you're going to jump out a window or something. If you announce, I'm going to mime school, they're like, oh, excellent. We're just very proud. The bar was lowered for me, right? It was lowered. And it's I'll be a mime. So from there I went into acting, which didn't, it didn't work. I wanted to have kids. I didn't want to have a job where, I was like working every weekend, and my heart wasn't in acting. And then I wrote a play in '85 and it got produced, and it's like, oh, this is great. It was really wonderful. So
just jumping off of that real quick, just in case you didn't know this, did you see that like Playbill is now doing basically what we're doing, and they're bringing theater parents on a live stream, which is shocking, because like if anybody thinks worse of parents than writer industry, it's like theater industry. Like, I mean, the fact that all the arts are a little bit like paying attention to parents now, I feel like we opened a door, or we were on the right track first.
Well, we also had a salon for playwrights as well.
We have done, yeah. But anyway, go on. Back to Louis.
Louis. Yeah, Louis. So, do you have a preference? Like, obviously, do you start with dialogue and then fill in the rest, like after, like as you're going?
I mean, I kind of start with a premise, like with a hypothesis. Like what is it I want to prove, and then I just start writing, and then I look at what I've written and I go, oh God, that's all like tell and no show. So I need a scene, right? So I take what I've written and start to craft a scene, and then you figure out where the dialogue goes. I think being a playwright kind of tuned me into how to listen to how people talk. And I was just giving somebody this advice the other day. It's just listen to how people talk. Just listen really carefully. Listen to the dialects. Listen to the patterns in their speech, and then just try to emulate that. And it's like anything else in writing. You do it by rewriting, just by tinkering.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you so much, Louis. We'll come back to our discussion. Finally, our final reader. I'm really, really thrilled to be able to present our final third reader, Sufiya Abdur-Rahman. She's the author of the memoir, Heir to the Crescent Moon. She's the winner of the Iowa Prize for Literary Nonfiction. Her work has appeared in publications including Catapult, The Common Online, Gay Mag, The Washington Post, Chicago Tribune, and NPR. She's earned notable distinction in Best American Essays, received fellowships from Sustainable Arts Foundation, and is a 2-time alumnus of Voe writing workshops. She's a creative nonfiction editor for Cherry Tree. And everyone, please welcome Sufiya Abdur-Rahman. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank
We're so lucky.
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I did get a couple of grants from Sustainable Arts. One was to attend a residency at the Mineral School, which was so helpful and just like the perfect thing at perfect time. And another one was to attend a writing conference as a parent fellow. So I highly recommend looking at what Sustainable Arts has available and applying. But today I am going to be reading from my memoir, my very first book, Heir to the Crescent Moon. It is a story. I mean, it's really a story of a daughter. It's speaking about connection. It's a story of a daughter trying to find connection with her parents and her parents' faith and their path to that faith. So I tell the story about what it was like for myself growing up as the child of Muslim converts, as a second generation African-American Muslim. But I also in the book tell a little bit about my parents' conversion story, how they found Islam and what their experience was like when they first got into it. And then a little bit, I tell a bit of a story about my grandparents, at least one grandparent on each side, to talk about what their upbringing was like so that my readers could better understand what their reactions were when they found out that their children had converted to Islam. So there's a lot of different connections going on in there. And I'll just read a little bit from the beginning and look forward to the discussion that follows. And I warn you that I haven't read in a while, so just bear with me. This is from the prologue called My Father. Before I even understood what a Muslim was, I knew I wanted to be one because my father was. Both of my parents were. This meant that I was too, but simply being born Muslim was not enough. When I was 5 years old in 1984, my father taught me that being Muslim is something more. He had a way of gliding into a room, walking on the balls of his feet like his heels were too good to touch ground. His steps were soundless that day, except for the faint swishing of his ashen soles across our cheap linoleum. I watched him as he strode from the hallway into the dining room, fingering a string of beads in his right hand. I had seen them before, hanging from a nail in the wall of his office at the opposite end of the hallway most of the time, and clenched in his hand at others. The beads were simple, plain brown, perfectly round, smaller than marbles, but bigger than sweet peas. They were strung together like a necklace, except where the clasp should have been, 1 or 2 or 3 extra beads jutted out and led to a stiff brown tassel hanging from the end. The flattened tips of my father's thumb and forefinger pinched each globe, then inched along to the next, the string of beads rotating in his grasp like stairs on an escalator. He did this while walking, into the kitchen and over to the living room, with his fingers at my eye level, almost as if unaware of the movements they were making. "What is that, Abi?" I asked my father, still eyeing the beads instead of looking at him. The little circles were plain but pretty, and seemed like the kind of thing a girl like me should have. Dainty due to my size and fragile because of my timidity and penchant for bursting into tears if even looked at unkindly, I was often treated like a girly girl. Never mind that I hated dresses, dolls, the color pink, except today, clearly, and to keep up with a boy my age. I thought if I asked nicely enough, my father might give the beads to me. He sat down in a chair faced backward from the dining room table and gathered me onto his lap. His caramel-complected face stared into mine, except his was framed by a low, dark afro behind his receding hairline, and a full black beard shading his jaw and chin. "These are zikr beads. They're for praying," he said, still not holding them out for me to touch. "But you're not praying," I said. "You're not even saying anything." "I'm praying in my head," he explained. "You don't always have to pray out loud, but Allah should always be on your mind and in your heart." My father used the hand not holding the zikr beads to point at my head and chest. I knew by then that Allah was God. My father most often referred to him as the Creator. He created the moon, the sun, the moon, the stars, the land, and all the people on it. And for that, we worshipped him. My father uncurled his fingers to show me the beads laid lightly across his palm. It was here in his hands that I'd get lost in the intrigue that was my father. I'd grasp his fingers and stare at the back of his hand. It bulged with pulsating veins I pressed down on and watched jump from side to side to avoid my index finger's pressure. I turn his hand over and study his palm, the intricate conglomeration of lines, fingertips, and creases, so deep and dark they were like crevices, dangerous erosions formed over time, through stress, and to be avoided at all costs, unless I could learn to read them, figure out what they meant. And so I held his hand at different angles, under varying lights, compared it to my grandfather's hand, and traced both of their creases with my tiny fingertips. Still, I couldn't decipher Abi, but I knew something was there.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. So my grandmother was a convert, and and she used to walk around with beads. She wasn't Muslim; she was Catholic of all things. She was converted in Shanghai. There's something about that that's actually really almost artistic. You know, like it's like this. When they'll like whisper, and they'll be praying, they'll be whispering, and you kind of hear that hushy sound like all day long. I don't know, was that like that for you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there is something to the tangibility of touching the beads, feeling them, and then, as you say, having that sound go on, even if it's very silent, it does kind of stick with you. And the motion of it, the repetitious motion of it is something that, yes, you can get entranced in.
Oh, definitely. So can you tell us a little bit more about your memoir, and why did you write this book? Why did you feel compelled to write your story?
Well, I felt like there weren't a lot of stories out there about my experience growing up in a household that was Muslim, but at the same time was also kind of pulling away from Islam. And so that left me with a lot of questions. And growing up, I asked a lot of questions to my parents about their experience and about the faith, and I didn't always get the answers that I was looking for. And so I wanted to find out these things, and I would ask other people questions and do research. And since there weren't a lot of books that really spoke about the experience, particularly of Black Muslims in America, I felt like, well, you know, if there's a book out there that you want to read, but it doesn't exist yet, then you have to write it. It was not my intention to write my own family story. My training is as a journalist. So I initially planned on just interviewing a whole bunch of other people that was not my family, and then kind of compiling their stories into one and making that the book. But I started that process, and I did include my family in those interviews as well. And I started it in grad school, and my classmates were just so drawn to my own family story that they always wanted to see more about that. So that's what it ended up being.
Ah, wow. So this was your thesis, basically.
Yes, it was. I mean,
Wow.
it wasn't this form when I was in grad school. I started it there, but yeah, it took a while after to actually finish it.
Can you talk about that journey? Just because I know a lot of people out there are busy writing a thesis that they hope someday will get sold, or they're, you know, whatever they're doing that's small. How did it transform and evolve until it got published?
Well, the interviews that I did with other people really were quite helpful, even though, you know, I didn't end up using them necessarily in the form that I got them. But it did help me to figure out what was the story that I was really trying to tell. What were some important elements to include in there? What kind of characters did people need to see to understand what this experience was like? And so once I got that kind of information, it helped me to figure out from my family what I needed from them. So I did spend a lot of time interviewing my dad primarily, but also my mother and a lot of their friends that were in the mosque with them. Spend time in, you know, archives doing research and reading books and things like that. And then after graduating, just had to work on the story myself, trying to pinpoint what chapters needed to be in there, what the structure should look like. That was the hardest part, was figuring out a structure that worked.
Did you do that alone, or did you find editors to help you with that? or
I
readers?
I was part of you mentioned that I was part of the Vona Voices workshops. I went to that 2 times during the time I was writing this book, 2 summers about 3 years apart. And my workshopees were very helpful to me, particularly when in the first group. There's a group of writers who I still keep in touch with today, even though it was now like 10 years ago. So that was really helpful. And my instructors for both of those workshops were also really helpful. One was Faith Adiele, who wrote a memoir about being a Black Buddhist. And then
Yay! I'm sorry, I'm Buddhist.
the second was Reina Grande, who wrote about the immigration experience from Mexico to the United States, her journey. And she had a lot of connection with her father in that story as well. So definitely those experiences helped me, but those were like, was it about a week or so each summer that happened? But yeah, it really was a lot of me just kind of banging it out myself for the most part, I have to say.
So this is, go ahead, Christina.
I was just going to say that, so not everyone can write a memoir. For those of you who are or aren't or whatever, I was just talking to a friend who, her mom just passed away recently. And she said to me, I wish I had thought to interview my mother. And I think that is really important information, because no one really thinks about that until it's like too late. And in your case, it was so good that you did this, because you actually have all that information about your parents. It's just wonderful.
I mean, I think so. And I have to say, that, as I said, I spent the most time interviewing my father, and I felt like it was really, really helpful, because he's the kind of person who didn't talk a lot about his experience growing up. So there were so many things that I just had no idea about. You think you know your parents, but then you find out, what, you actually don't. You actually don't know anything. And so there was a lot of things that I found out about that even when my siblings then read the book, they were like, I didn't know this. And I was like, yeah, who knew? So yeah, it definitely was very helpful to get that information from them in any form that they could. And even, I mean, I think our memories work in funny ways, that even once you tell someone a story, you may forget it by, the next year or 2 years down the line and not remember, you already told me this. And they're like, oh, I did. I don't even remember that story. So, so it's one of those weird things that, I when you have the opportunity, please do take it to interview those family members who you want to hear their stories.
Wonderful.
So I want to ask all three of you, if I can. I know you all each write about your faith in different ways. And I'm so intrigued by this, because it's such a touchy and like so many people get so angry just of, regardless of what the religion itself says, like your family members might get mad, like there's like so many people who have opinions about faith and religion. How have you had any issues with that? How have you dealt with that? Can you just talk about that a little bit? Because it's really unusual to have three people that have all written stuff about faith on the same thing that's not about faith. It's just about connection. So let's just talk.
I'll let you guys start, since I've already spoken quite a while. Go ahead.
Hey, Louis.
in my first novel, Mr. Boardwalk, I was kind of like gritting my teeth and waiting for pushback, because there were there was one character in it who was just this very angry young man who didn't believe in God and had these awful things to say about God, really vulgar and awful. And like any writer, you kind of, it's like, okay, well, this isn't me, this is the character. But at the same time, there's somebody calling God an asshole, and it's like, wow, okay, I'm gonna hear, I'll hear about this, because people won't understand. And I didn't get any pushback for that. So I assume either people didn't read it, or they understood and they got it, because I was really fully expecting to feel some of that. But I'm working on a novel now, and I don't want to talk about any details, but it's talking about not religion or faith, but the intersection of conservative politics and religion and faith, which, my thesis is conservative politics and religion go together like a syrup of ipecac and your stomach lining. And so if I don't push back on this, I'm
Quite
not
the metaphor.
job.
What about you, Sarah? Did you get any on your novel? Like, it's a community that is vocal.
I don't. It's so interesting to me. Like, I'm not writing for that approval in that sense at all. So, I mean, I was writing. This was definitely the most confrontationally Jewish book that I wrote. I wanted to address things head on and all its paradoxes, and the good, bad, and ugly. And so without any judgment, but rather to have it all hang out. And I don't really think that, I think the obligation of a writer is just to tell a story. So I don't really, it's an interesting question. Like, I don't care what a rabbi said. Like, that's not it. Like, it doesn't entertain the equation, because I'm not writing to please a member of the cloth or a believer, that's just not my imperative by any means. Like, I'm there to sort of hold up a mirror. So, I think that there's so much material there. And it was really, I think I, barely just scratched the surface, but that was something that I did want to look at and I think we tread in really, obviously it's different when you're writing memoir, nonfiction, and you're writing with people, who are a lot, that you're telling other people's stories. But when you're writing a fiction, when you're telling when you're writing a novel, like, that doesn't enter into the equation for me.
And nobody forced you into it either, which is great.
Everybody's, once you write a book, it's not yours anymore. And everybody's hopefully four people who read it are, allowed to have their own experience with it, and if anything, I'm inviting active grappling on the page. Right. And so, but I think you get into really dangerous territory if you're writing fiction for some sort of, with any sort of agenda in that regard. I think that's not something that I adhere to.
Super. Sufiya, how about you?
So I guess I would echo a bit of what Sarah and Louis said, in saying that, clearly I was not out to get approval by writing this book that, took a look at experiences that some people would rather not have in book form. But I will say that, some of the things that I've heard from people, I guess, have been supportive. Listening to some people who, it kind of shocks me to even say it, some people who called me a pioneer or trailblazer in thinking about Islam and the Black experience in Islam in this way. But it just speaks to the idea that there aren't a lot of people who are willing or comfortable speaking about these issues in the sense that they may receive criticism or flack for it. If you read my book, I've never been great at making friends. And so making friends just doesn't come into play. I'm just like, take anything. Oh, well,
you know, our friend.
My friend.
We want you.
So, that's not my concern is trying to make people happy. My concern is trying to tell a true story and telling a story that I feel like people need to hear more about. And it is folks' experience. Not just my experience, even though I am telling it from my point of view, but other people are sharing in this experience, and they need to hear that it's not all rainbows and sunshine. Yes, there is some of that in there, but that's not everything. And so that's the story that I wanted to tell. And if you like it, then great. If you don't, then sorry.
So one of the things that Parentis is really about, obviously, is staying writing, keeping on creative track, despite all of everything that's going on family-wise. So first of all, thank you for taking time out of your night on Valentine's Day. If you have kids, that's like a heightened crazy somehow.
I love you. I love you.
Like, it's extraordinarily difficult to get away from even a spouse, but with kids involved, it's like exponentially difficult. So thank you. I was hoping that you might take a second and maybe give a little Valentine's Day shout out to some hero that helped you. It doesn't have to be a spouse or a partner. It can be anybody who enabled you to be able to get some writing done. Who are the heroes in your life that, like, I mean,
Make it happen.
Like, we have kids. We know that it is not a solo job. And if you are a solo and you're doing it, it is extraordinary and you have jumped some hoops. So this is your time to give just a little quick, something to the people who maybe helped a little.
I can start with that one, and I don't know if she's here, but I'll give a big old Valentine's shout out to my mother, who's so very helpful to me. As a matter of fact, she's coming here next weekend because my husband is also a writer and he does readings around the country, and so he'll be traveling, and so I'll need help to hold things down here. So thank you so much to my mother, Labiba. Who's just wonderful. That's super cool.
There's just a big article. I'm getting back to you guys. Just think of who you're going to thank, because I'm just wanted to say that right now, a fellow of ours, a Parentis fellow of ours, wrote an article in LitHub about marriages that are both writers. And it's really a good article in LitHub. I can't remember the title of it. It's something about creative spouses, I think. And almost everybody that she mentioned happened to have already read for Parentis, so it's kind of crazy. but it was like really cool. And she mentioned like Victor Laval and Emily Rabiteau, and they were on our salon on the exact month that it was a Valentine's Day salon, because we were doing like Valentine's Day. And they came on, and she was super pregnant, and it was the month that she was on the cover of Poets and Writers magazine. And it was like the big, like, people have babies and keep their writing careers going. It was like a crazy 2013, my friends. That was
she's also coming back in 2024.
She's amazing.
So
yeah. Okay, Louis, Sarah, who are you thanking? What's the Valentine's Day shout out from you guys?
Well, I'll give a shout. I have to give a shout out to my wife, Catherine, because she is my Valentine. But I'm in this great marriage where my wife has been just so incredibly supportive of my work. For all these years, never expected me to make a lot of money or have tremendous commercial success, and she just respected what I did. But around 30 years ago, I wrote an essay in the Inquirer Sunday magazine about how I was a guy who spent a lot of time at home with the kids when they were little kids, while Catherine was working. And so I had this advantage being a man. Neighbors, people would kind of look and go, oh, yeah, no, he's a writer who's like home with his kids.
Yeah.
If I was a woman doing the exact same thing,
100%.
It would have been, oh, look, it's a mom, and she writes.
Yep.
Yes.
100% true.
It was kind of given to me because of my gender, and again, I've had incredibly supportive family and great best friends with whom I've been best friends since like we were 5. Nice. We're still friends and always been very supportive of me and really believed in me, and that's made a tremendous difference.
Amazing. Sarah, got any?
How about you?
Special?
Yeah, I mean, I'll do an inanimate Valentine and an animate Valentine.
Yeah, do it.
But the first one, I would give a shout out to the New York Foundation for the Arts. So we were talking a little bit about grants and stuff, and the NYFA grant as a New York resident was, something that I applied to many years ago, sort of really in the throes of parenting toddlers, not necessarily seeing sort of a way out or a way to manage anything. And, the grant from New York Foundation for the Arts was sort of the first little bit of wind in the sails, or at least gave me sort of, allowed me to entertain the possibility of.
Did you mention your kids in the application, or did you
I'm sorry?
Did you mention your kids in the application?
So, it's so interesting. And because I've thought about this, because it's the only grant I've gotten. right? And I will tell you this that I remember this night so clearly. It was due like, I don't know, December 15th at midnight, 2000, whatever it was. And my girlfriend emailed it to me, like forwarded it to me at like 9 o'clock that night. It was like, hey,
you should do this.
And you know, these applications, like, you know, I never applied to anything like this. So I didn't have sort of the savvy or wherewithal to open a fresh document and like write it and then proofread it and then, you know, cut and paste and save the initial version. I just like typed into the application and hit send. And so I have no recollection. It was like, you know, I got it, you know, 11:53. I think I hit send. And so I don't know what the hell I said, but it was clearly desperate. And so I mean, I have no idea. I wish I could, you know, replicate that. Or maybe they just took great pity on me. But that was definitely sort of the initial Valentine. And then I would echo Sufiya and also give thanks to my mom, who has come in, you know, the one time I went on a residency, or like, you know, certain times when I would do a sort of DIY residency instead of an actual residency, you know, she had been instrumental in sort of picking up some of that childcare as well, because it does feel insurmountable at times.
Well, Louis had mentioned that his kids are grown. How about you, Sufiya and Sara? How about you guys?
So mine are almost grown. I have a senior in high school and a sophomore in high school.
Right.
Good. How about you, Sufiya?
And I have a 12-year-old son. So he's in 6th grade in middle school now. And you probably saw the little bouncing head of the 5-year-old a little earlier. And then
we love it when they like, other people like it when the pets show up. We like it when the little kids are like, what's going on? Okay, I'm out.
Yeah. Right. Now he would have stayed if he could, but that's all right.
Yeah. Oh.
So in terms of connection, since this is the theme that you chose, and authors can pick and choose which salon they would like to be in. So can we talk a little bit about how this theme resonates with your work? Sara?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I again, like my structure here for, you know, in terms of the novel, you know, it's written by, I mean, it's told from 5 different points of view. Each character is so ensconced in their own drama and sort of in their own world. And so they're isolated. It's a self-prescribed isolation, but it's also societal to some extent as well. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's, you know, the whole book sort of hinges on where they intersect and where they, you know, intersect or miss each other and so forth. But it is that in terms of the imperative of the book, it really is. I mean, that's the want. That's what every character wants, is to connect with someone on a deep elemental level. I think that's actually the theme of all of my short stories, of pretty much everything I write. You know, if I were to distill the imperative in its sort of most basic way, it's, you know, my characters want to connect. With you know, they might not know how to go about it, but that's, you know, fundamental.
Let me real quick. We had a question from Facebook of what does 5 points of view mean, and I think what it was like, is it simultaneously 5 people looking at the same action, or is it over time the 5 different people are having sort of their own lives, which then intersect later in a meaningful way?
Right. It's told, like, structurally, it's told from the points of view of 5 different characters, and in close third of 5 different characters. And then sort of, I don't want to say it alternates, because it's not that neatly patterned, but those are the that's how it's structured.
Cool. Thanks. You can go right back to your story now, Louis. You can begin. Back on track.
You know, so in the Song of Life, every character is looking to make a connection. And, you know, I read something really interesting a few weeks ago in Timothy Snyder's book on tyranny. He pointed out, and I checked this out, there's data behind this. Almost any human being will jump in a river and put themselves at risk to rescue a child who's drowning. If they don't know the child, it doesn't matter. So I think that's a really good thing to keep in mind in these times we live in, that we have a basic need to connect with each other, that being alone, you know, we'd each have to invent fire on our own. You know, we're social critters. And so each of my characters is looking to make a connection. They're looking for community on every level. They're looking for connections, down to in the gym you connect with a punch. And Arjuna was a great warrior, and his cousin was, well, the lore is that Arjuna and Krishna were cousins. So this novel is about two cousins too, where there's fighting and a reluctance to fight. So it's really you know, trying to watch each of these characters make a connection that means something and is kind of transformative in their lives, because I think that's what we all do.
Yeah, for sure. How about you, Sufiya?
Yeah, I think I mentioned before about, well, first of all, from my own perspective, trying to connect with the faith of Islam and trying to understand my parents' connection to it. And so, yeah, it doesn't exactly get told from another character's perspective, but it is, you know, me telling part of the story of my parents' conversion, and also my grandparents' time raising children. So there are different areas where the characters can connect on a different level. And yeah, so I think that the connection that I'm trying to illustrate through the structure of the book, it brings in ideas that we're interconnected, even if it's, you know, multi-generational. What happened in your generation doesn't necessarily go away with the next generation. It's still there, even if it's in the background. So there is that element of connection as well.
It sounds like it was a very successful project, in the sense that what you're setting out to do was to get closer to your parents, understand them better. And the way you're speaking, it just seems like it worked, like that you actually did. I'm wondering, do you think
you guys judge that?
Well, no, I mean, I can't judge from it's in you, like whether you feel like you did connect more with them or not. But you sound so lovely when you're talking about it. Like it just seems like, oh, it worked. You know? But I'm wondering if it was the decision to look closely at them and treat them like actual human beings that are interesting, as opposed to how, you know, the rest of us treat our parents. Me. Sorry, Mom. I love you. But I mean, I think it's really interesting, like when you're writing a book about them, like it requires a certain real intense focus on them. And I wonder if that helps with the making of the connection, even as much as the writing, like whether just the writing of the book. I don't know what I'm saying, but what do you know what I mean?
I mean, in a sense, it probably worked the opposite way too, because, you know, there's connection, but then there's also disconnection about like the results of what happened in the book. So, you know, while I learned a whole lot, that may not have always added to actual connections. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
So one thing that I find really interesting about connection, and I don't know if you have experienced this, so I'd love to hear you guys talk about this. There have been periods in my life where, you know, there was a period I was living out in the suburbs, and I'm not really a suburban person, so I felt a little bit like disconnected, and it really affected my writing. I couldn't really connect, and I found that like I could connect more to the people in my books than I could actually connect to the people around me in my environment. How does that work for you? Is this just me, or Louis?
Well, I mean, I keep having these conversations with people. When I lived in West Philadelphia, where we lived for many years, I would talk with these friends of mine, you know, when Pennsylvania went red, and you know, all this conversation about everything between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh being, you know, Arkansas or something. And someone said, you know, how can you stand living in Pennsylvania? And my response, I didn't really think about it, was I don't. I live in West Philly. And now it's, oh, you live in New Jersey. No, I live at the shore. So for me, I think it's been a process of telescoping and going, so yeah, I mean, there's this geography, right? But then there's this community. And I've always been able to find some kind of community everywhere I've lived. And I'm not, I think I'll probably go the rest of my life without living in the suburbs. But when I was there, I made good connections with some really lovely people, some of whom are here tonight. So that's the thing. It's for me, it was just finding those connections and making community.
I think the writing community too is very strong, and once you get hooked into the writing community, it's really helpful.
I'm in a writers group, and we've been together. I've been in it for 34 years. The group's around 37 years old, I think. And it's a great group. We meet once a month. We critique each other's stuff. Everybody's a serious writer, and it's a lot of support and a lot of really great feedback. And so that's
once a month. You critique everybody. Once a month.
No, we meet once a month, and we critique one or two pieces of work each time.
Whole entire pieces or chunks of something?
Well, it can be a short, it can be a
I'm always fascinated by people's different writing.
The whole story, or a section of a novel, or a whole novel.
Wow.
So, if nights that we've got, somebody's novel is up, we only do one piece.
Yeah.
And, if it's two short stories or a couple chapters in a story, we'll do two. It's an amazing, wonderful, supportive, talented group of people. And I'm really
34 years.
Yeah, I've been in it for 34 years.
Wow.
And we met live up until COVID, and now we do it on Zoom. So we're having some discussions about whether we want to continue on Zoom, which would mean maybe bringing in new members from other areas outside of the Philadelphia area. So it's a big thing.
Interesting.
That's awesome.
Oh, well, guess what? Our hour is up, my friends. Let me invite everybody. I know, like it goes by like this. I want to invite everybody in viewing land to come back, and you guys can come back too, as viewers. On March 14th, our theme is The Wolves in Our Hearts. Who came up with that one? And the authors are going to be Sergio Troncoso, who we have had multiple times. I don't even know what to call him. I feel like a repeat guest, a regular.
He's a regular for sure.
What do they call the person in the middle of the Hollywood Squares who just comes back all the time? They call that something. The center square. Barbara Graham will be here, and John Sibley Williams, and that's 7 o'clock at Eastern Time on the second Tuesday of the month. I want to thank Sufiya, Lewis, and Sarah, and Christina and I are going to be here next week or next month. But you guys are awesome, viewing people. Thank you so much, David. Thank you. Enjoyed you too. Enjoyed having you out there. I have nothing more to say except happy Valentine's Day. Wonderful human beings.